Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of GLP's 10 out of 10. And today we have with us LA-based designer Kille Knobel. After growing up abroad, Kille eventually made the move to the West Coast and settled down, graduating with a Bachelor of Arts in Lighting Design from Cal Arts. She went on to work for Light and Sound Design, LSD, and the famed Icon Moving Lights series, running the training program in North America. Training led to requests for Kille to program and operate shows. And then came tour requests, where she headed out with the likes of Bryan Adams, Megadeath, and the Bee Gees. Kille has also worked extensively as a programmer on a wide variety of television shows, including the Billboard Awards, the Super Bowl 31 halftime show, and many other series, including Jimmy Kimmel's talk show, Dance War, Survivor, and a ton more. Kille was the lighting director for Cher's farewell tour, although I'm not actually sure if it was the first, second, or third farewell tour, whatever number she's up to. More recently, Kille led a drive-through experience in Hollywood for the hit TV show Stranger Things. However, in addition to this extensive resume, Kille is probably best known for a 20-plus year relationship with the Seattle-based rock band Pearl Jam, serving as their lighting designer, during which time she's partnered with and created a solid design partnership with Spike Brandt of Nimblist. Kille has also been nominated for 2 Primetime Emmy Awards. Welcome, Kille Knobel.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And I think one of the interesting things around, obviously, an extensive career, an extensive resume already, that you're very much, a working mum as well. You've got 3 sons, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So trying to find that, work-life balance, especially I think during the lockdown, must have been tough. I've got a son who has to do, online learning, but having 3, that's a challenge.
Yeah, it definitely, there's no textbook on it, especially in this industry. And I think I knew I always wanted to have kids, but I had no idea how it was going to work. Being, especially at the time, a touring mom. I was on the road all the time when I got pregnant with my first son. And so we just figured, we'll figure it out. And it definitely has come with a host of challenges I think typical working parents don't have because of the travel component, but also just the crazy hours and unpredictable hours and lack of scheduling that we have that goes along with this industry. So a lot of creative childcare along the way, and yeah, lockdown with 3 kids and online school is any parent listening to this knows that it has not been a cakewalk. I haven't met or talked to one parent since this started that thinks it's great. Oh my God, it's so great. Online school is so great. It's not. It's horrible. There are positives about it, but yeah, it's been tough.
Yeah, lots of challenges involved. Yeah. I can firmly agree with that. I think we've found our rhythm now at the moment. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's going to be one of those things that hangs around for a while. So
I think for one of my kids who's in a private school, he'll probably go back potentially for a hybrid in the new year. But the other 2 that are in our local public schools here, I honestly don't think they'll go back until next year.
I don't think. No, I agree.
It's a long time, especially I have a high schooler. That's a year and a half he's missing of his high school experience. So
right, yeah, that's a lot, and missing all their mates and
the social component, yeah,
hanging out, playing video games together, or down the
street. I never thought I would be a parent that would say thank God for video games, but in the case of COVID, thank God for video games, because that is socially what's connected them and given them a social network.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would really, they feel isolated as it is, but at least, and they're boys, so they're really into video games, like if you let them, they'll do it 24 hours a day. So.
Yeah.
Have it for them.
There you go. There we are. Plenty of Call of Duty and Overwatch, and all of them. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, I was hero status last year. Sorry to interrupt. When I worked on that Call of Duty League. When I told my kids, my kids do not care about the work I do or the shows I do, but when I told them I was working on that, I had some serious cred.
That's right. That's right. Mom, you're the best. It's incredible just to see that whole genre of esports is really, just growing and growing when it comes to the live events as well. It's
It was fascinating. I had never worked on one. The first phone call I made was to Arnold Cerami, who's been doing them for a really long time. And I was like, what do I do? How do I even emulate these guys? He was so great and so helpful. And it was actually pretty fun. I really enjoyed it. And then it got cut short like everything else because of COVID.
Yeah, it's incredible. I guess it'll be back next year at least. Let's hope. Things get back to normal. Wow. Right then. So let's have a go at some of the questions. So if we wind back to the beginning of your career, what was your first show as a designer?
This is kind of crazy to say. I feel like I did some small things here and there when I was with LSD. They put me out and, you know, I would do some special events or parties and those kinds of things. But the first real show I did was actually Pearl Jam.
Okay.
And arguably, I had no business in the role, because if you would have read my resume at the time, it was not a very convincing sell in terms of my, you know, background or preparation for the task at hand. But it really says more about that band than it does me. You know, the amount of times now I've been with them so long where I've seen the same thing happen, where they promote from within and they see potential in people and they launch them into positions that they otherwise may not have had at that stage in their career, or be given an opportunity for something, you know, as great as that. So it was all them. Right. I just was in the right place at the right time. I had operated a tour for someone else, and you know, they're a very loyal band, and I got along really well with everyone. And when it came back up the next time to go out, they offered me the design, and I was like, oh my God. I was terrified and elated.
Right. Pinch yourself moment.
Yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic. Well, that's great that, you know, they do have that family feel, I guess, when you're out with them, and you say promoting from within, looking after the people who are core to keeping the show running year after year after year.
Yeah. And if you look around the organization, particularly for women, there are a lot of women in positions of responsibility within that organization. I think it's the exception, not the rule.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's brilliant that they do that, and yeah, create that atmosphere, and obviously an open, diverse set of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. The more of that, the better. Absolutely.
There's not a day that goes by where I don't feel grateful to work with an organization and just people like them. They're really fantastic.
Well, and that goes to show as well, when the relationship is more than 20 years in existence, then yeah, that just proves it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and they are my extended family at this point. You know, a lot of the crew have been together a really long time. If you've been with the band 10 years, you're a newcomer. You know.
Right. Still green behind the ears.
Yeah.
I'm sure over your career, obviously you've touched many different shows and designed so many with Pearl Jam as well. I'm sure there must have been a moment where things didn't quite go according to plan. So our next question is, have you ever had one of these kind of Spinal Tap moments where everything you thought was absolutely right on track, and then all of a sudden it wasn't?
You know, there's not like one cataclysmic thing that I can think of. I feel like there's such a exhaustive long list of those occasions where the information doesn't get conveyed from paper to final implementation correctly. Like there's one really crucial detail you either forgot to follow up on, was missed. You get on site and you're like, oh, not what I meant, you know.
Right.
It's like we're problem solvers by nature. So every time something like that happens, you figure out what to do about it.
Right.
But one thing that does sort of jump out as kind of a Spinal Tap moment was surrounding the tour Temple of the Dog. And to really appreciate it, you kind of have to know a little bit of the backstory on the band, if you don't mind. So Temple of the Dog was kind of, in some ways, one of the first supergroups. And it was a band put together by Chris Cornell as a tribute to the late Andy Wood, who had just, you know, passed away unexpectedly and way before his time. Andy Wood was the lead singer of Mother Love Bone. And Mother Love Bone had two members that went on to form Pearl Jam after Andy passed away. And so Chris put this band together, Temple of the Dog. There was another member who would eventually go on to be in Pearl Jam. The drummer of Soundgarden was in the band. And this album didn't get a lot of accolade or attention at the time. But after Pearl Jam took off, everyone kind of noticed this album, and it really turned into this precious fan favorite, really special album. And Ed even sings on one of the songs. So they never toured the album. I think they may have played one show around the time of its release, maybe.
Okay.
Over the years, they would play songs from it, like the Pearl Jam 20 anniversary show. Chris Cornell came out and they played some songs. There was like a temple set. So they did a few things like that over the years. So a few years ago, they decided to get together and tour Temple of the Dog. It was a really big deal. And everyone that was involved with the project knew they were going to be party to something really special, and probably the one and only time it would ever happen. And I partnered with Spike, and we were doing our first show in Philadelphia, and it was a theater show. So it was really small, really intimate. It was very bare bones, intentionally so. They wanted it to be really simple and tasteful, and, you know, about the music. And I don't think I even had a truck's worth of lights. So it was mainly theaters, but we played Madison Square Garden with a theater rig. Everything was low tech, like even the set, we had these, we called them trees. They were tree inspired because the only video they ever did was, it was shot in a park in Seattle, but there were these like rope cone tree things. It was all lo-fi, you know, it was rope and shiv automation was our rig. And right in the 11th hour, the band said they wanted a tribute to Andy, and they wanted some sort of like statue carving Andy presence on the show. And you have to keep in mind, like, the backline, a lot of these guys are very established musicians, and they come with some backline. And so there wasn't a lot of space on stage, and the trees, you know, there were these trees, and then there were floor lights, and they wanted Andy to be kind of big. And so I just left it with Spike, and Spike, you know, he took the lead on it. And Jeff Ament, the bass player, is a really talented artist, and he gave us this sketch of what he, you know, his inspiration for Andy. And Spike made this really beautiful, there's a name for it, and I'm embarrassed not to know what it is, but it's like a wood carving, like it's set with, it's basically like 3 levels of wood. I don't know, it was beautiful. But Andy did not arrive for rehearsals. Andy did not get to the theater until after doors of the first show. And so we get the call that Andy had arrived, and we go out to the street, and Andy was not in a bobtail. Andy was like in a full 52-foot trailer, you know, semi-truck. And you open the back doors, and there he is, like in this semi-truck. And we quickly realized that Andy is not going to fit through any stage door. He's too big. And we're like, what are we going to do? The only place that Andy could fit through the theater was through the front door, and doors had already opened. And so we're like, we didn't even really know where we were going to put Andy, you know, because like, so anyway, Joe Bay was programming the tour, and I think he has some photos of Andy coming into the building. So Andy was hoisted above these stagehands, you know, like carrying him above their heads, almost like crowd surfing into the venue over the audience. And we're like, maybe no one will notice we're bringing this massive statue into the building. And so it was pretty great, and the photos are probably even better. And so Andy, we found a place for Andy between some trees, but this is what I love about tours like this and working with bands like this. It's sort of punk rock. It's like, there's no smoke and mirrors. We just throw some Duvetine over Andy because they didn't want him seen until the very end of the show. You know, other tours, this would have been a real deal breaker. Like, you can't have a big statue on stage under Duvetine, but that's what we did. And, you know, and so Andy still exists. He's in the Pearl Jam warehouse now.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. Well, how appropriate that he crowd surfed into the venue. That's brilliant. I love that. That is absolutely a Spinal Tap moment where something doesn't.
It kind of was,
That's
yeah.
absolutely perfect.
I have to hit up Joe Bay for those pictures if he has some. I have some of him in the truck and then like getting to the stage, but I don't have the in between, which really was the best part.
A real moment in rock and roll history.
Yeah.
Fantastic. What would you say is the best piece of advice that anyone has ever given you?
That's a tough question. I think multiple, there's not like one single bit of advice. My dad, for teaching me the importance of a strong handshake and the importance of making a good first impression through a handshake.
Right.
I think especially as a woman, you know. My mom, who really taught me more through modeling than giving me a single piece of advice, the importance of being able to assimilate into like a lot of different kinds of situations and get along with people, like try to get along with whoever you meet and not be the biggest thing in a room.
Right.
And creatively, I think Spike actually, you know, early on when we were working together, he has this phrase and he uses it all the time as sort of like a measure when we're looking creatively at things. That's not to use too many crayons. And that really sticks with me, like in my own work when I'm like trying to evaluate something I'm looking at in the middle of programming. Too many crayons is never a good thing. You don't want it to look like a bunch of jelly beans, you know. Keep things simple.
Right. That's right. Focus on what's the important stuff.
Clean.
Yeah. Fantastic. That's great advice. Great advice for anybody out there listening as well. So, professionally, what would you say is your proudest achievement?
I feel like, you know, in this business, we're always being tasked with pulling off what seems untenable, and we always do it. So there's countless opportunities, you know, over the years of being faced with like extreme challenge, and somehow through it all, you do it because you're surrounded by great people, and, you know, you do it time and time again. And those moments always make me really proud, but I don't know, maybe I'm getting sappy at this stage in my career, and, you know, my age is starting to set in, but I'm feeling a little bit more sentimental about things. And I think the thing that really gives me a greater sense of fulfillment these days is looking at my position in the industry and trying to find more opportunities for mentorship. I had a tour a few years ago, and there were a few women on the crew, and we had been to Europe, we had done a US run, and South America. And South America is always like a real challenge for anyone. I feel like it's like the ultimate testing ground. If you can survive a South American tour, you can survive anything.
Right.
And so we've been together on and off for several months. And this one woman in particular, we didn't really hang out so much socially in our off days, but, you know, she was great, got along great, was a great, you know, member of the crew, and she's actually in the automation department. And at the very end of the tour, I'm flying home, and she had quietly tucked this card, this thank you card, in my bag. And I read it, and it was just this really lovely thank you note. And it was really articulate and thoughtfully written. And she basically just thanked me for being, you know, a strong female role model and just someone that she could look up to. And it was like being thanked for just being you, you know,
Right.
and doing what you do. And it really, it was one of the most powerful things that had happened to me in a long time, because it kind of pulled the curtains back on, well, maybe I need to take a better or a bigger role, not so much like informal mentorship, but I do have something to offer, you know, in terms of maybe helping people that are starting out. And I don't know that I'm great or necessarily suited to be a classroom teacher, but I realized that teaching in the moment and teaching in the workplace is something that I need to be more thoughtful about. And so anyway, it was just it was like a really small moment, but that brings me more fulfillment than, you know, a lot of the other stuff, you know. And I think we also have a tendency to always compliment each other behind each other's backs. Like you'll be talking to someone like, oh, Mark, have you worked with him? He's so great. You know, he wears those great red glasses and everyone loves him and he's always so easy to deal with, but you never actually tell the person, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And so taking those opportunities to make the people that you work with feel appreciated and valued and that their efforts are seen,
Yeah.
you know?
Right. That's great. I think you're right. Sometimes things just, you know, you get wrapped up in a whirlwind of a day or you know, a leg or a tour, and you're right. Sometimes you forget to stop and be appreciative to everybody around you. And
I always really try to make an effort to do so. But I think it's sort of the specificity of sitting down and really telling someone what you think their strengths are. You know, especially in a position of responsibility or leadership, I think it's really important when you're asking people to do hard things day in, day out, that you find a way to always make people feel appreciated and that they're the sum total of an effort that would not be successful if every person wasn't playing their role. But I think it's important also, you know, to dig down into a little bit more of a micro level, especially with some of the up and comers.
Yeah, that's great. That's brilliant. So anybody listening, if they want to contact Kille, she's got
1-800-Kille advice.
Yeah, classes start at 9 a.m. on Monday.
If you want to know anything about color palettes.
Yeah, but that's great.
That was the ultimate compliment, was finding my color palette on someone else's tour.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Then you know you've made the right choice. But yeah, that's right. Yeah, bringing knowledge forward to the next generation is a great thing, an important thing, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know that we do a great job of that in this industry all the time.
No.
I know that there are organizations like making more efforts in that area, but you know, it's something. I was really lucky getting into this business that I had this de facto mentor in Abby Holmes. She and I worked together in the very early days of my career on and off for probably a good solid decade. And whether she liked it or not, or whether she was totally aware of it or not, she was truly my mentor in this business. And it wasn't like this formal thing, you know, but over the years, she's always been, and to this day, someone I can always call with professional or even personal advice. And I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones, especially having someone like her at a time in my career where there really were even fewer women, and having someone that had already been doing it for quite a long time. I think it's a really positive thing.
Indeed. Absolutely. Completely agree. Obviously you go out and tour a lot when the world is normal. But when you're at home, what do you normally do in your downtime?
Well, I hang out with my kids. So I have 3 sons. One's almost 16. I have a 13-year-old, and then my youngest is turning 12 next week. But now that they're older, like, the version of hanging out with them is basically threatening to take away all video games unless they leave the house and go somewhere with me. That's how that works these days.
It's a bit different even though they're younger.
Yeah, and I'm lucky when I'm home. I work on Kimmel, so that's a pretty respectable schedule, 4 days a week, and so I have plenty of time with them. And you know, I like to play tennis. I like to get outside. I love going to the beach and taking long walks on the beach. Just try to work on my house. It's normal, boring.
That's nice, just having that family time and kind of switching off from all of the hecticness of the work schedule, and just finding that.
Yeah, and you know, going back to what you were saying earlier about being a full-time parent in this industry, I'm super lucky that I have that kind of time, and that was a choice I made. You know, when I started having kids, I knew I could continue with my foot on the accelerator in terms of the trajectory of my career, but I would be like so many of the people I was surrounded by on the road whose spouses were raising their kids at home, and they really weren't a part of their day-to-day life. And that was not something I wanted. However, I really didn't want to give up this part of my career, because the music side of my career is really what makes me tick. It's what I love the most, you know? And so the fact I was lucky enough to work with a few bands that didn't tour for 18 months at a time, that
right.
would only go out for a few weeks or, you know, a month or two at tops at a time, and didn't go out all the time, I was able to do it. And I was able to keep, you know, my little pinky toe in the mix.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, it was definitely at the cost of some career advancement. I'd be lying if I didn't, you know, recognize that. And it's definitely without regret. And the last couple of years have been a little bit of a turning point for me because my kids are a little bit older. And so in those early years, it was really important that I was home more than I was gone. And I never want to be gone more than I'm home. But the last couple of years, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to like get back in it a little bit more.
Right.
Things are really starting to happen, especially last year. This year was going to be a great year, busy year, tons of stuff on the horizon. And then it was just like,
and then boom,
done.
The whole train stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as you mentioned, of course, you know, you did when you're in LA, when you're doing Kimmel, I guess, you know, all of the Kimmel and all of the other talk shows, they all stopped as well. The studios were completely closed for a while, right? As they did.
Yeah, they all shut down, but TV and film is kind of the first back online. And I feel very, very fortunate because I know so many of our colleagues are still struggling and have had to pivot to completely unrelated fields. And I know what that, you know, sitting there for all those months not working with a very specialized skill set, thinking, oh my God, I'm unemployable. Like, I've never waited tables. I've never had any other job except for this one.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty terrifying, horrendous feeling, you know. And I think so much of what we do is like we get a lot of our confidence and sort of some of our self-worth, you know. We all do this because, well, not all of us, but I think most of us really are driven by this career because it's just such a weird, special thing. And so to have that taken away is pretty
that's
terrible.
right. There's nothing that instantly replaces it at all.
No.
And especially when we become isolated because we're forced to through lockdowns and you know, everything like that, and just not being able to gather and not being able to do something for a live audience is it's totally foreign to us all, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Hopefully that will change over the next few months. We'll see.
Let's hope so. Fingers crossed. There are glimmers of hope starting to come through. So let's hope.
Yeah, and you know, like some of the work has come back, and you know, but I think for the touring stuff, it's going to be a slow roll. You know, we just have to be sort of ready to hunker down for what that's going to look like when it happens.
I think so too. I think that is very a different world on the other side. We're going to start to experience. But talking of going around the world and you know, experiencing lots of different things, you must have visited, you know, hundreds of different venues by now. Do you have a particular favorite venue at all?
The ones that stick out immediately are the ancient Colosseum in Verona, which I was lucky enough to go to a couple times, and then the ancient amphitheater at the base of the Acropolis. I did a show at once. Right. So these are gigs that are horrible to gig in, you know, but they're so cool. Yeah. You're just marveling that you're even doing shows of them, especially the Acropolis. That was pretty special.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago. That was super early on in my career.
Yeah. But those venues don't come up that often because obviously a lot of them, I guess, are protected sites. So it's got to be something really, really special and take a long time to put together.
Yeah.
And I'm sure obviously from a design point of view, you can't just load in, you know, let's take 28 trucks of gear. Everything's got to be thought about completely.
No, the second time I went to the Colosseum in Verona, we were doing a film shoot. So it had we didn't bring in a lot of supplemental gear because they were shooting our shows all around Italy. But still you had the weight of trying to show this gorgeous venue with minimal extra kit. Right. And then we got hit by this wicked rainstorm. And the band actually played in some of the rain too. So the footage of that night is pretty spectacular.
That's cool. That's great. They do that. Not afraid to embrace the whole situation and be a part of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, we mentioned, we've been in various different forms of lockdown over the last many months. Musically, if you could only have one artist or one album with you to listen to, do you have a particular person or album that's your favorite that you'd always want to have around?
That is almost an impossible question. Well, my favorite artist of all time is Tina Turner.
Okay.
So probably Private Dancer.
Right.
But honestly, like if I was to be left with nothing to listen to, I would probably choose podcasts to listen to. I listen to a lot of music, but I tend to listen to more podcasts than I do music. So that's really what I listen to the most in lockdown, where there are some podcasts that I really was affectionate for.
No, there you go. Nobody's had that as an answer yet. That's interesting.
Yeah, there was this one, it's called Home Cooking, and they released it during quarantine, basically to cope with their own sense of isolation, and it was like there was something so familiar, and the hosts, they were so friendly to each other, but also to the callers, and you just felt like if you were in the kitchen together, you'd be best friends. So it was like an hour listening to these people that suddenly felt like your friends, and there was something really comforting about that during a very unsettling time.
Right. That's brilliant. Now, I think there's been a lot of creativity and a lot of new things that have come through the necessity of COVID and the restrictions, that people want to stay in contact with each other and want to still have some connection. So yeah, I've certainly found myself listening to more stuff.
Yeah, we don't all play video games like our kids.
Oh, right. Yes. Break away. If you could spin back in time and go and visit the teenage Kille and offer her one piece of advice, what would that be?
Probably not to be an apologist.
Okay.
That, especially when I was starting out, and some of this goes back to like the advice I was telling you about from my mom, like to be able to assimilate into a lot of different situations. My mom she's like an English and Japanese woman trapped in an American's body, so she's always super polite, and she can kind of fit into any situation because of that. And so getting into like a very male dominated field, that was a really strong influence in my life. And I had this desire to be able to get along, especially back then, you were like trying to counteract the perception that in order to be a successful woman in this business, you had to be a ball buster, and I was really afraid of being perceived that way. And so I tended to be a real apologist, I always like, I'm really sorry. I don't, I hate to make you climb the truss at this time of day, that light really needs to get swapped out. I wanted everyone to like me and be my friend. I didn't want to ostracize people. And I mean, it was mainly men. I worked with so few women in the early days. And in retrospect, it's kind of how I went about it. But I realized over the years that there's no reason to apologize. There's no reason to feel sorry for asking people to do hard things, because we're all there willingly to achieve a task. And part of leadership is being strong, and that it is possible to be strong and confident and assertive and still be likable and get along with people and create a good sense of teamwork and camaraderie within a crew. And that it's okay to have high standards and high expectations and not to apologize for it.
Right.
That makes sense.
No, absolutely. That makes very good sense. Yeah, that's right.
But that was a real transformation for me over the years in my career. Like if you looked at the 20-year-old version of me versus the 40-year-old version, and some of that comes with experience, but also like yeah, I was just always, and there were some really intense personalities back then, you know, and I thought the easiest way to get along with them was just to be sort of like a mouse.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's true. I mean, the industry was evolving very much at that time into a new phase with all of the, obviously, when we mentioned your role within the Icon program from LSD, you know, moving lights were very much, you know, happening. So there was the bigger crews, bigger, you know, bigger trucks, bigger rigs, bigger, everything was moving into another phase of the concert touring development, I think. So, and with that,
Yeah.
absolutely, as you say, a lot of strong personalities around at that time with the
Yeah.
different companies and shows.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That is great advice. Yeah, putting that all together, assertive and you know, persuasive and getting stuff done with a high standard, but not being a, you know, still being a likable character. That's
Right.
I think
Yeah.
you wrap all that up, then you're a good leader.
You know who actually, like, because I've been thinking about him a lot because we just lost Robert Cooper. Did you know Cooper?
No, I didn't.
So he is like this mythical character around the time that I got to LSD. He's just this powerhouse of a crew chief. And, you know, his reputation preceded him for all the reasons, like strong, snarly, crusty, grumpy, but powerful, you know, characters back then. But he was one of them. But he was the kind of guy that could make your life miserable, but if you were brought into his fold, then he'd protect you to the end of the earth. So when I first got to LSD, they sent me out as a programmer tech on a show with him, and he was just ruthless to me. And it was a gig, and it was probably really small. It was probably like 20 icons at Fort Mason in San Francisco, and it was raining the whole time. And I just remember at the end of that gig going, oh my God, if this is what it's going to be like, I don't know if I'm going to survive in this industry. Like, I cannot take this. And I don't know, a few months go by, I do a few more shows. I'm starting to get stronger sea legs about everything. And I see Cooper, and he's through the shop. You know, it was either in the shop or maybe another job. And, you know, like when a sibling who gets beat up on by their older brother and sister all the time just wakes up one day and suddenly punches back.
Yeah.
That switch turned on in me with Cooper.
Okay.
And I don't know what caused it. Maybe it was just a little bit more confidence, or I just didn't, I was like, you are not going to treat me like that again, you know? And the switch turned on, and I hit back, and I hit back so hard. And from that point forward, every time we were together, I felt like I had the upper hand with him. And I could see when that moment happened, like the quiet joy that he took, and almost sort of the perverse happiness that he was like, there you go, girl.
Right.
You found your voice.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't know that it's the most effective tactic, but in a lot of ways, Cooper was the reason I sort of found my legs, you know, and found my voice, and also stopped being so afraid.
Right. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant to be able to pinpoint it down to, especially, you know, a person who's had that fantastic effect on your career. It's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. If you were able to sit down for a cup of coffee with one person, either living or past, who would that be?
Tina Turner.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I worship her. I'm a total fangirl.
All right.
Yeah, I love her. I've worshipped her since I was a little girl.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely iconic in what she's achieved through her career as well.
Oh yeah, she's just a powerhouse. I was living in Dubai, and we didn't get any concerts. The only artist that ever came through live at that time was Shakin' Stevens, and he played the ice rink. So at that time, some people would come and they would televise the concerts, and Tina came, and it was the Private Dancer tour, which is why I'm so fond of that particular album. And they televised it, and there she was with her two dancers, and yeah.
Right.
Game changer.
Yeah.
And then I only just, you know, ended up worshiping her and loving her more over the years. And I was really lucky to do a few Roger Davies tours. And I always felt like I was like 1 degree of separation from her. All my friends worked with her. All my colleagues worked with her, but I never got to work with her. Then she retired.
Right. And then that's
done one more tour. I would have been
there if she ever came back. But it's funny because I thought about her a few times. You know, you see artists who do their farewell tour and then again and again. But when she announced her retirement, she has retired and that's it, completely stepped back from everything and enjoying obviously the life that she has now. So, yeah. And left just, you know, there's the legacy. Leave it up on the wall and don't. Yeah.
I admire that. I think she stopped at a perfect time, and you know, I understand the pull though, why people do it. You know, we're sort of joking about how many farewell tours has Cher had. I get it. Like, you think you're done, but it's all you've ever done, you know. And then imagine, it's almost like an equivalency of COVID. You think you're burnt out and you don't want to do it, and then suddenly it's gone, and you're like, oh,
right.
I miss it, you know.
And
maybe it's financially driven, but I also think people just, they think they're done and they're not really, and that's okay. It's okay to have farewell tours.
Keeps us all going.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a certain, you know, it's often said about the bug biting you for working in this industry in whatever capacity. So yeah, there must be the same with all the performers as well.
Yeah, it's infectious. So. It's, you know, it's intoxicating. It's hard. Think of anything else where you get that kind of nightly adrenaline of running a live show, especially when it doesn't all go according to plan and you survive it, and that, you know, that energy of running a live show, it's just unparalleled.
That's true. That's true. Absolutely true. And with the audience screaming and everything coming together.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Tina Turner. There we go. We'll note that one down. And now we get to our final question already. It seems to go so quickly sometimes. Once we finish the interview, your phone is going to ring, and it's going to be the US Olympic team.
Oh, God.
And they're going to call you up to, it's your time. You get to compete for Team USA. Now, it could be for the Summer Games or it could be for the Winter Games.
Okay.
The question is what's the sport they're going to call you up for? What have you always fancied having a go at?
I think tennis would be my sport.
Yeah.
I played as a kid and I really enjoyed it. And then I got into the arts and school, and I ended up going to art school when I was 15. So there were no sports there. And then I also went to art school for college. So there were no sports there. So sports kind of like disappeared from my life for a long time. And that's been one of my COVID inspired, like, okay, let's get back to some hobbies, you know? So yeah, I've taken tennis back up. So a year from now, I don't know if they're taking women pushing 50 on the Olympics team or on the Olympic team, but I'll try out. I'm sure I'll be Olympic ready in no time.
There we go. There we go. I think the one thing we've learned from this year is that nothing is impossible. Everybody can achieve. So maybe there's a bit more practice time. Obviously, the Olympics have been delayed, so got time to get.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they do. Isn't it supposed to be in Japan this summer?
Yeah, in Japan. Yeah.
It's a little unlikely, but I don't mean to be a pessimist.
No, I think still everything is everything is tentative. I think with any of those things, which is unfortunate, of course. But yeah, with vaccines rolling out, then there's positive signs on the way. Really positive signs. So that's right. Lots of that keeping it.
Too.
Great. Kille, it's been fantastic having you here. It's obviously, you know, really appreciate the time and continued, obviously, good luck in everything that's going on there. And obviously everybody can tune into Jimmy Kimmel on 4 nights a week and watch everything that you're doing there. And of course, always look forward to trying to see each other again in person as soon as possible when it gets back to normal.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun. It's nice to still keep tendrils in the business because it's easy to feel pretty separated right now. So
yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, brilliant. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Kille.
Bye.
Bye.